I'm here. I'm still working on things.
Excuse me.
All right. So I guess we're on. Hey, good evening, everyone. I'm Hannie. Not always technical savvy, but I am Hannie. And I have Jerry with me this evening. Good evening, Jerry. And
Hi, everybody. Welcome back.
yeah, we ran into some technical difficulties earlier today, but we couldn't reschedule this show because this time next week, what's happening? The
Uh,
Suquamish
let's
Foundation.
see. We have a foundation dinner. Yes,
Right, right. And y'all be in attendance for that, right?
I'll
Yes,
be
ma'am.
there.
Oh, it's fantastic. Anyway, so yeah, so here we are. So Jerry and I have invited two of our coolest friends this evening. We have Ed Stern with us, and we have Daria with us, and we'll go ahead and I guess Jerry, you start introductions this evening and introduce our guests.
All righty. Thank you, Hanny. I'm Jerry Hebert. I am formerly a Kitsap County Vice Chair and
Democrats.
currently the Secretary for the 23rd Legislative District Democrats, and formerly a Washington State Human Rights Commissioner appointed by our governor twice and confirmed by the Senate. I've also served as our human rights campaign coordinator for the great state of Washington, which has led me into politics back in Washington, D.C. So that's my history. With us this evening, we have two very astute members of our community that I not only admire, I look up to.
Hmm.
And out of fairness, one of these two individuals is a candidate for office for the mayor of Poulsbo. And since I'm supposed to be unbiased, I will confess I'm already endorsing. He's
Same.
already got my vote. He's my favorite. So this is not going to be necessarily a friendly question and answer period, but it's certainly not going to be a hostile one. So with that, I'd like to first introduce the campaign manager for our guest Ed Stern. That would be Daria. Daria, I'm not. I've tried to avoid publicly speaking your last name. It's Ilgen, but I frequently get my tongue tangled around that one. Daria is the campaign manager for Ed, and Daria, why don't you say hello so you can introduce Ed yourself?
Sure. No. Well, thanks for that, Jerry. I think that admiration goes both ways. And I thought you were also going to say formerly a precinct committee officer as well. And that was going to be sort of the handoff intro. But I guess, maybe to add a little color there, I'm Daria Elgin, local Poulsbo resident and proud dad to two spirited grade schoolers. I'm also a husband to a local business owner, part-time alpaca wrangler, and recovering corporate strategy guy trying to use my powers for good now. These days, I'm trading boardrooms for barnyards and local politics for good, bad, better, or worse. And honestly, I think the alpacas and the pigs are easier to reason with, as I'm finding out so far. But I bring a collaborative approach and a fresh, strategic, and innovative mindset to building community, solving tough problems, and getting things done. Excited to be here and looking forward to our conversation. And I think with that, as you mentioned, also campaign manager for Ed Stern, who has been on Poulsbo City Council for almost 3 decades now. And I think at this point is looking to take the next step in his political path in becoming the next mayor of Poulsbo, and especially at a critical juncture where the role of the mayor is changing from a full-time kind of CEO mayor now to a part-time one. And I think Ed is going to be the one that is ideal to lead the helm for the city going forward, to knowing the ins and outs and also having the relationships there to empower our new city administrator, Rob Gelder, to be able to do their job effectively, right? Not having to have a huge learning curve and knowing what to do, what not to do, but then also just being able to empower them from day one without needing to micromanage. So I've gotten to know Ed over, the past, 5, 6 months or so, and now call him a dear friend. And I think very excited to see him become the next mayor of Poulsbo. And with that, Ed, let you do your intro.
Boy, first of all, Jerry and Hannie, good evening. Good evening, Daria. Pleasure to be here. Pleasure to support the Hannie and Jerry show. And we'll do my best to answer questions. I don't need to necessarily repeat most of what Daria said. I'm on my seventh consecutive term on the Poulsbo City Council. I've always, public service has been a beacon in my life. I started as a special education teacher, uh, getting my degree from the University of California, Berkeley. I then moved up to Montana in 1977, where I practiced archaeology and environmental impact statements for 6 months. Went back to special education. That was at the beginning of the Carter administration, Title I, the Department of Education, ironically. And I helped write a grant to land that in the Livingston, Montana School District, Jerry. And that grant writing came to the attention of the city. There's the point of intersection. And they offered me a position of director of grants. So I voluntarily left education. And it was the heyday of federal grant writing under the Carter administration. I was successful with that. Did a number of innovative projects in Montana. Did that for close to 10 years. Then swore I would never be in government again. And I changed my career. For 35 years, I was an investment advisor. But the good Lord, having other ideas, heard my prayer to never be in government again. So he came back in 1997 and had me get on government as an elected official instead of making a career there. And so the last 27 years have been with a stipend, not a salary. I did not make my living in public service. It was truly an emotion of the heart and a desire of the soul to serve while also making my private living and balancing both. So that's kind of the picture I'd like to paint, Jerry and Hannie.
Well, that is only a brush across the surface of a really, truly soulful American citizen. I admire you a great deal for that very reason. In today's day and age, we just don't have enough of that camaraderie and you know what's the best way to put it? You're my favorite wordsmith, Daria. What's the best word? Coalition just doesn't seem to really do it. What I saw out there when we were marching wasn't coalition. That was something else. I don't know. How would you
I,
describe it?
honestly, authenticity. Like I view it as just like being a very authentic member of the community and being open-minded and collaborative and prioritizing relationships and people over other things. And honestly, I think I might have to quote one of the wise mentors of mine in the world of politics, statesmanship. All right. And that quote comes from Jerry Hebert from one of our early on conversations around, becoming a precinct committee officer. So I think honestly, statesmanship for me plus authenticity would really encapsulate a lot of that.
I have to agree. I was impressed with the number of people that went out of their way to get to the front of the line so they could say hi to you. That people were just, it was an amazing day, and you shined through that whole thing. It was so family. It felt like family.
Mm.
It didn't seem like there was a right or a left, a center or an up or a down. It seemed like just family together that entire parade route. And that's kind of the theme of my next question. We haven't always behaved like a family. There have been several instances over the past couple of years that have been very troubling. We've had shootings by police because of screwdrivers and slashing banners in our, along our main street, um, screaming and yelling at the town council as well as at the school boards. It just seems like that wasn't the group of people I saw over our last holiday. How are you, or what are you thinking? Rather than how, I think I want to know more about what are you thinking in terms of how we bring these diverse mindsets into a community that recognizes the need for community.
At me, Jerry, or at Daria?
Yeah, I'm sorry, Ed. No, I don't talk to Daria anymore. I just had to, you know, I just
That's
had
good.
to, I just had to get him to figure out the word that I couldn't figure out. Now he's
That's good.
finished.
I'll be here
So,
when you
no,
need.
yes, you, Ed, please. Um, yeah, it is to you.
I think key here, the highest office you can rise to in the state of Washington that is by definition nonpartisan is mayor. And when you come from a long background in the community, people aren't thinking left or right. They're thinking participation. They're thinking action. They're thinking commitment. You're judged by your walk, not your talk. And because Poulsbo is relatively small at 13,000 people, though we expand to 25,000 during the day, you can really get to know people. And I think the sense is we're collaborative, we have camaraderie. The council is regarded as the best functioning council in Kitsap County the last 25, 30, 35 years. When we have our friction, we do it behind closed doors for the most part, almost entirely, because the council and the mayor have to model that which we would hope from the community. And again, it doesn't go back to rhetoric, it goes back to action. And I think
Exactly.
people know that and sense that. And that's why, in part, besides it being a beautiful place to live, work, and play, it has a wonderful reputation for coming together and getting things done. And I'm honored to both be a member of that community and now offer myself up to lead the community, Jerry.
I appreciate that. And I'm certain with you at the helm, there'll be some changes that'll be positive. What is your vision for our law enforcement and for our public utilities along the waterfront? I know those are two separate questions, but I thought I'd give you a chance to choose the one you wanted first. When I refer to law enforcement, we have serious concerns about the full training capabilities that the city has for providing our officers with a variety of skills that they haven't been trained in. We'll just put it that way. Um, I personally experienced a lack of training from our law enforcement. And our waterfront is beginning to concern me a great deal with the erosion on the side of the cliff along Front Street and the drainage pipes that are going off into the bay that appear to be corroding, that kind of. Once we moved that one building across the street from where it used to be at Martha and Mary's, that's a two-story home across the street there.
Yeah.
We had all kinds of erosion and corrosion issues. That was the big reason why it took so long and was so expensive, was all that fear that the bank was going to give out under it. I haven't seen much change yet. I don't see much getting better. So how serious is that, or how serious isn't it? So
I'm
there's
very
your two.
serious. I'm not at the helm if elected until January. I've already begun an inquiry on a latter point you raise just today and the last week about the stability of our seawall, the shoring of our the bluffs above the boardwalk is
Mm-hmm.
what you're referring to, Jerry,
Right.
that people avail
Correct.
themselves of. And we're dealing with climate change and rising ocean levels. We're dealing with more violent king tides. And so that question is going to be raised. I have raised it. I'm going to be meeting with staff as a councilman. That's different from being a mayor.
Right.
And then next Wednesday evening at 5 p.m. in council chambers, we're having our first summit with the Poulsbo Port Commissioners in over 4 years. So very timely. You did not tee up the ball. We did not co-conspire on that
No.
question, but it is unfolding as you ask it. In fact, in reality, by coincidence. As far as police, we've already made some strides. We have a whole new younger generation in the police department. We are moving from escalation to de escalation. The best way to sum it up, Jerry and Hannie, is and Mayor Erickson's helped lead the charge on this since the tragic shooting of Stone Child Chief Stick some almost nearly 6 years ago. And that is moving from a warrior culture, which is typical of policing in the United States, protect and serve, these are the town warriors, to a guardian culture,
Right.
to protect and serve. And I'm very proud to say that Kim Hendrickson, who heads up our Health and Human Services Department, has been a key point of contact between the community and the police and the fire department, with an embedded behavioral navigator now in the police department and responding to mental health crisis before it becomes a criminal activity, if at all possible. I know that sounds ironic in light of events of the last 2 weeks, but it is a very serious effort. It is a funded effort, and it is a driven effort. And come January, if elected, it will be a renewed effort, Jerry and Hannie, I assure you.
That's very good to hear. I hope to see it in fruition. It sounds a lot like what you're talking about with law enforcement goes right back to the early days of the Clinton campaign when we did community-oriented policing. But I personally believe we didn't do that program all the way. We selected what pieces we wanted to do, and therefore the program wasn't as effective as it could have been. I'm concerned what our training budget looks like compared to what actually is being delivered, all things that you'll be dealing with as a mayor. So I'll be grateful if we can make some of that information more public than what it has been. My
Super.
next question, though,
Sure.
is in reference to a recent comment made by a contractor to me at the boardwalk, who said doing business in Poulsbo is great when you're dealing with other business. But when you're dealing with permitting, the city is almost impossible to get through that process.
Hmm.
So I've heard that before, but I heard that it was much better than it was before. What's been going on there, and what do you see in the future as we continue to need housing and building?
So that's one I keep my ear close to the rail on, not only within the echo chamber of Poulsbo, but countywide, being a executive committee member of the County Economic Development Agency, Kitsap Regional Coordinating Council. I have contact with the other 3 cities and the county constantly. I know that the county was undergoing a lot of duress with its Department of Community Development. Recently, they put in a new head of that. They were taking a lot of criticism about their permitting, and I'm going to have to contradict possibly what you heard from that individual. Keeping my ear to the rail without prejudice. I haven't been the mayor. I'm city council, which means I'm a lot more responsive and a lot less defensive on issues.
Right.
I'm not in the city, I'm on the city, as I referenced in my opening remarks. Once I become a mayor, I will be both in and on the city. That'll be different, but I haven't been. So I can play that middleman ombudsman role without prejudice, and I have. What I've heard is that Poulsbo has the most responsive permitting process in the county, and the way Gary Lindsay and Kelly Clark, who spoke separately to me on this, they're both developers, was Poulsbo for them has been an outcome based process rather than a code enforcement process. They said to me they can bring in a proposal, and the planning department's attitude is, well, what is the end result you're trying to achieve? And let us help you get there and walk you through the regulations and codes. And they were very clear to tell me the other departments on the whole are much more bureaucratic and much more granular, and you're on your own to walk through the steps and implement, because the concern is on the process, and that in Poulsbo, it's the outcome. And that I have literally from the lips of Gary Lindsay and Kelly Clark in the last month. And I'm just going to affirm that. There's always the one off. I don't know the individual you're speaking of, and I'd be happy to engage them. I do have to be careful at this point, Jerry, and I'll say this to Hannie as well.
Yes.
Being a council person, and there's seven of us, we are not to involve ourselves per se in the day to day operations of the city. And that's actually an RCW, Revised Code of the State of Washington. The mayor is the CEO, the staff answer to them, and the council has to be careful about crossing that line. We can push, we can shove, and we can express concern, but we are not to direct the staff. So I have to base a lot of this on what I hear, what I see, but I can't direct as such. So I hope you appreciate that separation between council and mayor, and I'm respectful of that, as if when I become mayor, I would expect others to be respectful of that as well. Might
I
sound like nuance, but
I know I
27
am.
years I've had to live that line.
Yeah, and thank you for making that delineation, Ed, because a lot of the time I think is just like, your average general city resident, the what a council member can and cannot do, or what a specific department can and cannot do,
Exactly.
unless you go in and you actually ask or get guidance on that. We don't always know. So I always appreciate it when our electeds come up and say, "Hey, listen, these are things that I can do. These are things that I'm not necessarily able to do, but I can always refer you to someone that may be able to help you in your situation." So thank you again.
Thank you, Hanny.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that, Hanny, I'm glad you said it that way, because that was kind of the direction I was hoping we'd move in, was that our public officials nowadays are getting hate calls and getting death threats and are being treated like they're some kind of in, invading army instead of our elected officials. And I'm frequently frustrated when people say we don't have any control of our government, yet our voter turnout is still pitiful if it's less than 90%, in my view. How do we get to a point? What do our elected officials from all of our, especially our junior taxing districts, what do we have to do within the confines of our own community to help explain that if you want the government to do something, whether it's build a new house for the homeless or put in new sewer lines, you're not going to get it right now. It takes specific efforts by different varying people to get to that point. Everybody is responding the way in my environment, the people that I'm talking to are responding like they expect the homeless issue, or they expect the shortage of food issue, or they expect our teacher issues to be solved immediately, tomorrow. It's that emergency. When in fact, it takes years to plan ahead for some of the changes we're asking for. So, what do you think all of our junior taxing districts should be doing when they're talking to the public to help them understand exactly what the difference is between what you can do in your own backyard versus what a municipality or a city or a utility can do?
I think the key is getting involved. There is no magic bullet. There is no magic politician. There is no magic commissioner to just wave a wand and get her done. And if
Right.
one is invested in an issue, they need to get involved. And I think Kitsap County and certainly Poulsbo is small enough and affords itself for that involvement. The idea that someone's going to take care of it and that you can just lodge a complaint uh, and things are going to happen, they're going to try to happen. But if you're there to help guide it, if you're there to help shepherd it, if you're there to help explain, and if you're to deliver it, in fact, is the best way. And I think of that old saying from the 60s, think globally, act locally.
Thank you.
I would say think Poulsbo, think Kitsap, think Silverdale, think Kingston, but act on your block. act in your precinct,
Right
act
on.
on your local commissioner and council person, but act. You can think these issues, but you need to act. And it's all of us working together when we're able to move the needle effectively. Otherwise, it's going to be very frustrating to think that it can be delivered up somehow for you on the basis of a complaint. We would hope that would help, but it's not enough. And we're small enough that all of us here on the peninsula can affect this change, the change we want, the change we dream, the change we need. We're change agents.
Exactly. We have about time for one more question, Jerry. So, one last question
I,
for Ed.
I'm actually going to ask the simple one now, Ed. After all of these years of service, I myself fall prey to this. Daria is learning to fall prey to this. Out of all these years of service, what do you feel like you still need to accomplish? What do you still want to see before you leave?
That's a
I'd
good
like
question.
to broaden the relationship with our tribal neighbors. They're anxious to work with us. We're anxious to work with them. We can get across purposes. Um, that's a big one, and I've invested a lot of time and effort in that. Like raising children, like a good marriage, or even a hardworking job, you have to get involved. You have to show up. You have to care, and that's a two-way street. And I will do everything in my power to make sure that two-way street is unhindered. Um, I've spent a lifetime as a college university guy and as an original educator in my first iteration as a job all those many years ago. I believe that community based education is the basis of neighborliness, economic development, and career pathways for our children and ourselves, and the basis for having equity to be able to be a participant in society and a stakeholder. And so, Olympic College, what we're doing with the healthcare crisis in this county, in this peninsula, nationwide, we want to be a leader there. We want pathways from junior high into the high school, what are called guided pathways. So it isn't just a 4 year academic track. We'll offer that through Western Washington University, but also jobs on a technical level within the healthcare industry. We are building what's called an allied health center with Olympic College in Poulsbo. It will get fully underway by September. Our partners are Kitsap County. Our partners are the Suquamish Tribe. Our partners is Virginia Mason Franciscan Health. And we're going to stand it up. And being able to provide jobs, career pathways of interest, of value to our young people, will keep our young people here. And go back to an earlier question,
Mm-hmm.
train people to be involved from the get go in their community, to live in their community, to prosper in their community, like Daria, to raise their family in this community. That's the key to all of our problems. That's the pathway that I want to help put my shoulder against the wheel. And in the 4 years I might be offered as mayor, help guide at least acting locally, Poulsbo in that direction, Jerry and Hannie.
All right, cool, cool. So, Ed,
Wonderful.
how do we find out more about you? Do you have a website or something like that where we can learn more about your campaign and Poulsbo and that?
And fortunately, you invited my campaign manager here, Daria. If you could help answer that question and guide how people can be involved.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. We do have a campaign website. It is simply, edstern.com, where you can go and, learn about, the various background for him, but then also the issues that, he's building his platform on and get to know him and a little bit of his history. I think even going back to seeing a lot of the photos of him engaged in the community is actually it's pretty inspiring, just to see somebody who has had that significant of an impact on the community over the years. So
Right.
edstern.com.
Alrighty, cool. Thank you. Any last comments before we wrap this up? And thank you again for coming by and telling us more about what's going on up in Poulsbo. I know I live in South Kitsap, so I've learned a lot. So thank you again for coming by.
Thank you, Hannie.
I have to tell you, Daria, I was sure you were going to say, well, yes, we have a website, but the best way is just call me.
No,
or
no,
or
no.
even more realistically, just come on downtown for coffee any morning and we can
Right.
find you. So,
That is true. My home away from home is Cafe Cucina right there outside corner uh, table under the umbrella. You can always find me there.
Yes, you
yeah,
can.
right next to Ma's place because that's my favorite. I love the food they've got there. I won't even turn this into an advertising for downtown Poulsbo, but if you haven't spent some time shopping the food in downtown Poulsbo, you're missing out. Thank you,
Definitely.
Ed. It is for me not only an honor, you've taught me this evening as well, and that's saying a lot. You'd have impressed me, and at 69, that doesn't happen all the time.
Thank you.
You are my hero.
Oh,
Thank you so very much. I'm looking forward to your leadership, and if you need anything, Hannie and Jerry are always there to help, and Daria knows our address. We're in the same precinct.
Alrighty. Thanks again for
He's my
coming.
precinct
Have a
committee
great
officer.
evening, everybody.